Now, the idea of change itself does not sell the idea completely. And this may be hard to understand, but when we talk about change, usually, especially in the Singapore blogging context, it is synonymous or equatable to the idea of democracy, calling for democracy. And that in itself may appear like a very strong argument, morally at least. But in terms of workability, in terms of sustainability, and especially, and most importantly, in terms of historical auditing, it is not a very robust idea. Democracy in itself does not bring about a better world. When the USSR, the Soviet Union, began a process of democratization, it did not bring about a better tomorrow for most Russians. They saw their life savings being wiped out, and many of them basically lost their jobs. And not only that, it led to balkanization, and that started a series of civil wars. So today, if you look at Russia, it is basically countries within countries that make up the whole idea of the previous Soviet Union. But this is a tenuous relationship whereby they are all fighting with each other for resources or in order to consolidate their power bases. So this whole idea of democracy as a reliable agent of change in itself is not a very compelling argument to me. And it's brought into sharp focus because when you look at countries like China, and China, say what you want, I mean, it's a one-party system, it's a communist system, but China is a country that has progressed relatively well without the whole idea of instituting democracy. And you could say that what they're doing right now is slowly, osmotically integrating democratic principles into their policies. Say what you want, but the infrastructure that has been able to deliver the good life to most Chinese has essentially been the Communist Party system. So that in itself is a very good illustration of why I believe the whole idea of change in itself, if we link it with the idea of democracy, may not be a good idea at all. Now, if there is any compelling idea that would bring a better world about, it has to be an idea whereby we internalize it ourselves and we want to see that architecture emerge within that community and not try to transplant ideas from abroad into a place like Singapore. I don't think that that idea will work. I don't think, for example, the whole idea of liberal society will work in Singapore. Not because conceptually those ideas are repugnant to me. No, I believe in the idea that people should have a right to say certain things. I do believe in the idea of freedom. I do believe in the idea of small governments, that governments should aspire to have a very small footprint in the lives of people so that they become less intrusive and pervasive. I do buy into that whole logic. But the question that we need to ask ourselves is does that logic make sense in a place like Singapore? Because what is seldom ever or rarely discussed in Singapore is how history itself colors where we are today. History itself determines why we have certain policies that exist today. Now, many people, for example, if you take a very contentious subject like let's say the Internal Security Act, they will tell you that, well, you know, there's no freedom of expression there. You can't say what you want, and those rules are very draconian, and they operate at a level whereby they have no regard whatsoever to the rule of law. Fair enough, that may be the case, but if we take that attitude, then I think we've been presenters. Now, the definition of a presenter's attitude is one whereby we actually superimpose our understanding of the world based on our present knowledge, as opposed to looking at things historically. Now, whether you like it or not, historically, this doesn't sit well with my idea of whether we should have the ISA. Because even if you look around this area, this area alone, if you look around here, right? You see spent 303 shells. You see shells of Kalashnikovs. There was a firefight here many years ago, and these fuckers were not playing it. They had guns and they were out to kill people. So, you know, if today people tell me that the communist threat is over, I say to them, well, that's well and fine. But once upon a time, the communist threat was a real and present danger to us. And those people who perpetrated the whole idea of perpetuating the communist system were very serious men. And they had an agenda which they had every intention of prosecuting with the force of arms. So when we talk about the whole idea of the ISA, we really need to step back from our present state of mind and into the whole idea of history, and to see the events unfolding historically, and to try to understand why. Why is it that today we have those remnants of paranoia or security-mindedness that still pervades much of state policy and what you call official thinking. And I can understand this, because the whole idea of terrorism is not something that you fuck around with or you take lightly. It is not, because it can actually have a very devastating effect on trade and commerce, and also the whole idea of well-being in a general sense. So this is something that that I don't want to see going away. The ISA is something that should be kept in place. The issue, in my opinion, is whether the ISA should be used against certain crimes, against certain acts, or against certain people who we consider to be, who the state considers to be unsuitable. But that's another question altogether. We're not going to go into that, because that is a question that involves a whole lot of constitutional issues and issues of what we refer to as definitional questions, and it's really a very long-winded area. But what I'm trying to illustrate to you here is that when we talk about the Singaporean context, alongside the whole idea of blogging, we need to be mindful that this is a whole construct whereby it is conceivable that we bloggers may not even be representing the majority view. And having said that we don't represent the majority view does not mean that what we have to say or what we have to tell the world or what we even think is worthless. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that at all. But what I'm saying is that if we're not mindful of how events unfold, and if we are not mindful of how or why there are certain set pieces in government today, then what we will end up doing is we will end up changing those set pieces, and we will end up replacing it with stuff that may not produce any good at all. Now, this is something to consider, and now I've got to get back to work.